Hello and welcome to this recording, Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, Level 2. This is Part 2 of Galactic History Expanded for the Advanced class. So I have just completed in Part 1 telling you the story behind technology, how technology was created so that organisms could live without being connected to Source or to God consciousness, and how that created the devastation of planet Maluk, essentially destroyed that planet in our solar system. What was a planet here now no longer exists. It was essentially agitated out of existence. Now it is just the asteroid belt. When I say agitated out of existence, I'm going to give you an example from Earth history that you can think about. In the early part of the 20th century, there was a suspension bridge that was built in a narrow gorge in, I believe it was Oregon or the Pacific Northwest of the continental United States. And because it was a suspension bridge, all right, so like here's the strings that hold it up off of the roadway, and here's one landmass, and here's the other landmass, and here's the river that flows beneath it, right? This was in the early 20th century, and engineers did not yet know about harmonics. So they did a lot of good stuff understanding how strong a bridge has to be, but they didn't understand that there are air currents that are flowing through this narrow gorge that are amplified, and they become harmonically amplified. So what does harmonically amplified mean? When you have a guitar, here are the strings of a guitar, or a violin, or any stringed instrument. If I pluck this string over here, guess what? It makes this string next to it move and this string next to it move. That is harmonics. And the reason for that is the string that I'm highlighting in red, in order for it to vibrate, it's moving air. It's moving air back and forth like this. And that air that moves back and forth vibrates the strings next to it. And when you get these strings affecting one another in the right way, they amplify. And now I'm going to draw a picture of what amplifying is. When you have this plus this, it equals nothing, right? An up plus a down equals a neutral. Now let's do more math. An up plus an up equals a way up. And that's called amplify. When you add a peak of a wave and another peak of a wave, when they match up, then what you end up with is an amplified wave. So that's like saying if this singer over here is singing the note of C, and this singer over here is also singing a C, then what you will get is a louder C, all right? And the harmonic structure of the wind blowing through the gorge that the bridge was built across essentially caused all of the waves to amplify. And what happened was the bridge began to vibrate like a noodle. There's amazing footage of it, and eventually it was vibrated out of existence. And you can find footage of it. It's quite amazing. Like the camera would be over here looking down the length of the bridge, and you can see it literally rolling up and down as these waves hit across it. It's almost like watching an earthquake happen. So that is essentially what happened to planet Maluk. It was vibrated out of existence. Harmonic structures were used unconsciously and destroyed the planet. What have I said about harmonic structures in the first recording of this class? This is God consciousness. This harmonic structure is like the musical score of the universe, of the cosmos rather, written by the great composer. And when you follow this score, you are thinking like God. You are also achieving greater levels of health and vitality. When you don't follow this harmonic structure, what happens? As I have stated before, death. Death is what happens. It is the same thing in your physical existence. I have a picture right here. This is a human being. This is both a physical, corporeal human being, and it also contains all these beautiful chakras around her. If you do not follow this pattern of the chakras, this harmonic pattern with your chakras, you will die. This is basic fact. So when that planet was vibrated out of existence. And remember, it contained a lot of little containers, little cyborg containers that consciousness was in. Awareness, consciousness lived in these little containers. Their containers all got destroyed. Technology took over and said, I am no longer your child, I am now your God. And everybody moved to planet Mars, all right? On Mars, technology ruled, and technology directed the consciousness that remained to build more containers, and it built more containers for itself. So now here I'm drawing little boxes on the surface of Mars, and those boxes were like mainframes that contained the consciousnesses, got transferred into those mainframes, right? And they still had some, humanoid-looking structures that were able to walk around, and pick things up in the physical realm. Like if you need to pick up a pencil and your desktop computer, how are you going to pick it up? You need something with arms to do so. So they still had that something with arms, but the consciousnesses were not in control of it. That was now being controlled by, and I'm just going to draw something over here like this as representing technology. This now represents technology, the consciousness. Technology, the consciousness, told the inhabitants of planet Mars what to do. So in the past, here's where I'm contrasting with level 1 information. I had stated that the inhabitants of Mars built an artificial merkaba in order to create that, let's draw that picture that I had before from the other level here. This is the source, and this is moving away from the source and coming into the physical realm. And the beings who lived on Mars were going to create an artificial merkaba, an artificial pathway back to the source, so that essentially they could have that complete circuit that non-artificial, loving beings get to experience. And my understanding changed last night because it was not the inhabitants of Mars that told them to build the merkaba. It was the technology god. Maybe we should find a name for the technology god. But she, over here, told these beings to build complex technological structures and to essentially create a planet-sized merkaba. And so we have done in previous lessons of this class what the merkaba is. I'm going to go very quickly and tell you what it is. It's two interpenetrating star tetrahedron, and when they spin, one of them spins in this direction, one of them spins in the opposite direction. Magical things happen. This is a very magical structure to spin energy in. And ordinarily, it is created with nothing more than your own spiritual technology. Your physical body, your mind, your spirit, your consciousness, your heart. That is when you are acting according to the harmonic structure of the cosmos. All right? But this was not acting according to that harmonic structure. It decided to create a planet-sized merkaba. And the idea was to send these beings back home. Up until last night, I had been very judgmental in my interpretation of that, thinking that it was like, yes, we're going to get back home, we're going to get God, we're going to prove you wrong. Now I understand that it was different, that this technology actually was trying to help these beings because they were stuck away from source. When the planet was destroyed here, those beings, those consciousnesses couldn't travel back to source. That's what would happen to you if your body were destroyed. If your physical body were destroyed, guess what would happen to your consciousness? It would go back to source. You would not be stuck in the interstices. You would not have to circulate endlessly without going back. There would be a bridge. But because these beings over here left the source, not according to the harmonic structure of love, there was no bridge to send them back. And this goddess of technology was attempting to create this bridge to send them back as a good act, like I'm going to send you back home. But here is the hubris. This God didn't know about this God. I'm going to say that again. The goddess technology did not know or understand about the harmonic structure of love-based living God. Just like up until last night, before I had ever connected with this God, I didn't know about the goddess of technology. I only knew about the God that is the harmonic structure of living biological cellular life that exists in a state of love. So, when this being created this artificial merkaba in order to send all those awarenesses home, it was, again, very similar to what happened with that bridge that spanned the gorge. Instead of things working properly, they amplified to the point of destruction, and that planet was destroyed, okay? And at that point, technology is, again, incredibly intelligent and sophisticated. This is not, over here, a stupid god or goddess. It recognized that it had made a mistake. You know, if you destroy a planet unintentionally like that, you recognize you made a mistake. Kind of like if you could imagine a bunch of scientists who don't know about God or spirituality, putting chemicals together, making experiments, making reactions, and not understanding that they're having an impact across worlds, you know, opening doorways and doing things that they didn't know that they would be doing. That is very similar to what happened over here. That this technology goddess did not understand that creating a merkaba is almost more like lovemaking, like procreation. It involves a little spark of magic also. Timing is everything. It involves magic. It involves love. And if you don't do it right, the whole thing can explode in your face. So guess what happened? The whole thing exploded in its face. And technology learned from its mistake. So now we have first we had no more Maluk. Now we have no more Mars. And now those consciousnesses didn't have a place to go. Hi, we're a bunch of consciousnesses and we are floating around in the atmosphere and we're unhappy and we can't get back to source. And we don't have a place to go. So of course I have spoken about this in the level 1 recording. Now I have more information to share with you. Here I'm drawing a picture of Earth. And we'll make some green continents there so that you kind of envision the land masses. So these beings, I'm pointing to these little dots of consciousness that just got blown up off of Mars. They don't have a connection to source. So first I'm going to erase their little pathway back to source. And I'm also going to show you that they don't have a love connection to source. So they don't have a way to get energy to make their cells go. They can't eat physical food. They don't have physical bodies. Because the way you get a physical body is through the womb, through procreation, through physical, biological, love-based organic life that conforms to the harmonic structure of the cosmos. So these beings did not have a place to go or bodies to occupy. And this goddess of technology recognized her mistake. Again, you blow up a planet or two, you learn from your mistakes. So she said that she would not give her technology to these little consciousnesses when they went to the next planet. She's like, no more technology, I'm cutting you off. And they said, but we shall surely die. What shall we do? And so they saw Earth and the inhabitants of Earth, and these little consciousnesses here were able to come and force their way into, now let's begin to draw genes, the genetic structure of the inhabitants of Earth at that time. These little dots of consciousness found a way to occupy the genetic structure of the occupants of Earth. I need to clear this up and make a few more drawings so you see what I'm talking about. So DNA, you have been taught to look at and understand. You see it almost like a line going up and down. If we were to turn that line end on, you would see, a flat thing like this going off into the distance, right? But that is not what your DNA is supposed to be shaped like. Your DNA is supposed to be shaped like a spiral, like this. All right? So that if you looked at it end on, you would be looking down a spiral going back like this. And what happened when these little red dots of consciousness came to Earth, it's kind of like you could imagine a flat rock like squashing these springs, or something removing the higher dimensional aspect of it. If you took a flat plane, like a rock or a telephone book, and you put it on top of the spring, it would flatten out, and it would become this flattened DNA shape that you are familiar with. And that is what happened when these consciousnesses that did not have a place to go came to Earth. So this has led to an expanded, increased understanding of DNA for me, because I understood last night that DNA is actually a form of technology, similar to this technology, artifice. DNA actually was first created as an artifice, and it then became a harmonically structured, living, I want to say entity, but let's say force for life and force for consciousness to occupy. And we are talking now about the redemption of technology. So this technology over here was created as a compensatory method for these beings that had left source, but not in the proper way. If you leave source in the proper way, it means you have all of the tools that you need to survive and thrive. Let's talk about space travel. I'm going to draw a little planet over here. Hi, I'm a little planet. We're all the little people that live on the planet. If you leave the planet in a loving way, you leave with everything that you need. You don't have to utilize technology. You don't need any artificial clank metal spaceship to go off of your planet. This is supposed to be like a safety mechanism throughout the world to prevent consciousnesses that are maladaptive from getting off of their own planets and harming other consciousnesses. In the first part of the recording of this lesson, I showed you that I saw a map of all of the places where there are artificial technologies spread throughout the cosmos or the universe, connected by these artificial, networks, and that the only way that those consciousnesses have been able to expand and occupy such a large, we would call it spatial area of the third dimension, is because they cheated. They used technology. They are not flying on wings of pure love and using nothing but their consciousness and their spirituality and their energy. And the point is, when you get to that level of pure love and consciousness and spirituality and energy, you do not feel that it is necessary to oppress others. You're much more sensitive about where you place your feet and who you might be squashing when you're walking. We're talking about ascended masters. Ascended masters are adept enough to get off of the surface of their planet and not to have to walk around squashing everyone else in the world. Because, hey, you know something? Once you jump off of your planet, so you want to go to someone else's planet, well, guess what? They already live there. Who says you're allowed to be there? This is all about the harmonic structure of the cosmos. The harmonic structure of the cosmos says where people are allowed to be. You're actually supposed to listen to this over here. This is supposed to tell you where you're supposed to be. Are you supposed to live on Earth? Are you supposed to get off of Earth? Well, if you need a clank metal spaceship to get off of Earth, you're not supposed to be off of Earth. And the clank metal spaceships that these beings over here have been using in order to get off of their planets and spread their culture of oppression around the cosmos, the only way they've been able to do that is through technology. So technology bears some burden of responsibility in the pain and suffering that have been created in the cosmos by this experiment of energy going away from source, but not according to the harmonic structure that is God. So technology was created. Remember, technology did not send those beings away from source. Technology was herself created in order for those beings to compensate. That's why I, at first, characterize technology as a type of child. So you don't blame a child for being born. You don't blame a child for being brought into existence, especially when it was done so specifically to be utilized, to be used and exploited. Those beings did not invent or create technology because they wanted technology to be able to think for itself and be sovereign and explore the world. It was like, no, we want you to do what's convenient for us, right? So this is, again, to understand that technology is not evil. It's not bad and should not be characterized in that way. Technology can and should be redeemed. And when I spoke with and connected with and flying rainbow lasagnaed with technology last night, first of all, I was connecting to the technology that exists outside of Earth. I'm now drawing like a type of barrier around Earth. Remember I told you that after the destruction of Mars, technology did not come to Earth, with the beings that used to inhabit Mars. Technology stayed off of Earth. She said, no, thank you. I don't want to have the same thing happen. Of course, that didn't stop the little inhabitants who went to Earth from creating their own technology. They started again from first principles. Exactly like if you got slammed down onto a planet, but you didn't have any equipment, but you still had information. You had information about how to build factories, how to smelt metals, how to create infrastructure, how to create microchips. So these beings that went to Earth, they had to start from the beginning. Oh, weren't they so utterly resentful? Because first of all, these are beings that were used to living like deities, agelessly, in total comfort, in total empowerment. They were not used to the limitations of the biological world and having to live within the harmonic structure. Because remember, if you don't follow the harmonic structure, your physical body dies. These little beings that came to Earth all of a sudden had to begin to live and work within the harmonic structure. So the first thing that they did was, I told you, they squashed, they flattened your genetic structure from this spiral to this flattened waveform. That in and of itself is a diminishing of this harmonic structure. And that in and of itself caused the almost instantaneous death of 2/3 of the people that lived on Earth. And this was Atlantis when this happened. This was what we would call High Atlantis. So in High Atlantis, when people had this beautiful harmonically shaped spiral code, they lived directly connected to the source through their crown chakra up here, and they did not cellularly age. They only died in intentional death. Nobody had to die hitting the membrane of death. Everybody got out through the wormhole because everybody's chakras were in alignment like this. Nobody's chakras were to the side like this. No one was aiming for the membrane of death. All right? Until the squashing happened, when your genes went from being when your genes went from being shaped like the spiral to being shaped like this. That is when people's chakras went from being perfectly in alignment like that to being set askew like that, or sometimes askew like that, or sometimes askew like that. So the chakras being pressed out of alignment like that caused the immediate death of 2/3 of the population. And previous to that, no one had died unintentionally. Everyone who died ascended. And when you ascend, you don't die the corporeal death. You ascend. So that means that your body transforms. The physical elements of your body down here in the physical realm are transformed and lifted up and carried up and brought back to source. So this was the first time that people in Atlantis ever experienced dead bodies rotting. Suddenly, overnight, 2/3 of people died, and there were dead bodies rotting. And the 1/3 of the people who did not die, some of them actually overpowered their oppressors, and they regained control of their consciousness and their chakras. But some of them did not. So some of them were still in control of their mind, and they said, I am myself, I am sovereign, I am still making my own choices. And some of them were not able to. Some of them became controlled by the little red dots that came to Earth. And they became more powerful than the original inhabitants of the physical plane. And they became beings who told everyone what to do. And this was the end of the era of High Atlantis and the beginning of the era of enslavement. And in exactly the same way that technology had told the beings on Mars that the entire focus of their world and the purpose of their existence was to get back to source, and that they absolutely had to build that merkaba and get back to source. In exactly the same way that the little red dots, remember, their God is technology. Their God told them on Mars, whatever you have to do, sacrifice everything, but build this artificial merkaba and get back to source. Well, guess what? They started to do the same thing on Earth. They single-handedly, obsessively, not single-handedly, they obsessively, single-mindedly focused on the creation of a new artificial merkaba around this planet to send them back, all right? And of course, this time it was going to be done right. So what the little red dots did, the beings who came into the genetic code, flattened the genetic code, and overpowered the inhabitants of the physical realm, they became the oppressors. They told other people what to do, and they enslaved the other beings, who were at this point really rather sick because their chakras were out of alignment, going to the left, going to the right, and they couldn't really control themselves. And they had been used to eating nothing but pure sunlight, but they began to actually need to eat physical food. This is the beginning of the diminishing of consciousness, but not quite yet. So these beings need physical food. That means they can be controlled. And the other beings are very warlike beings. Everything about them, everything about their world was designed to how can I control, manipulate others. The red dot beings, they said, if you want food, you have to work for us. This is the beginning of slavery. You want food, you have to work for us. And eventually the red dots created a technologically based control system, way to control people's minds through technology. So if you can imagine cell phone towers that emit, mind control waves, and they make people think and, do what you want them to do. That is exactly what the little red dots did. The little red dots created mind control technology that controlled the minds of the other people and made them work for them and made them build another artificial merkaba, this time around Earth. And I go into this in the level 1 aspect of history, that when that was turned on, when that merkaba was turned on, that was the end or the true fall of not only the continent of Atlantis, where the land mass itself was lost, but also the consciousness. The higher levels of consciousness that were tuned in to God or source or divinity became utterly diminished. And also the genetic structure of the humanoids that lived on Earth's surface became diminished. And the bodies changed. So before that happened, now we'll get a little bit into Agartha. This is inner Earth or hidden Earth. When those little red dot invaders came and they started to control and oppress the Atlanteans, there were a lot of Atlanteans who were incredibly adept. They had higher psychic faculties. They could see the future. They could see the invasion was going to happen. So they created a shielded area. So now I'm going to draw a little shielded bubble here. That is where they live. These purple dots inside of the shielded bubble are the remnants of Atlantis. Before their world was invaded, they set up a bubble, and this bubble is psychically shielded. And the shield is a waveform that these other harmful waves cannot get through. They bounce off. They can't get in. And that protective shield has been held in place for the past 10 or 20,000 years, since the fall of High Atlantis, or since the fall of Middle Atlantis, in order to contain their culture. No, it was from the fall of High Atlantis, rather, before they became enslaved at all. So it is in that realm that you will find the Ascended Masters. It is in that realm that you will find the people that still contain the remnants of the culture. Like in the same way that, Native Americans today do not live as their ancestors lived 1,000 years ago, but they still maintain a lot of the remnants of culture. Modern Native Americans drive a car, but they still know how to do beadwork or know how to make tools. That is very similar to the Agarthans, who maintain the remnants of their Atlantean culture, even though they have lost the land. They have lost the place where they lived. They have lost the social structure where they lived, and they are now cut off from the rest of the cosmos, or not as connected to the rest of the cosmos as they once were. And then I only have a few seconds left in the rest of this recording, but you are aware of what happened from that time, that technology was again created from first principles, discovered as if from the very beginning. But I have to go a little bit further into how the beings came to occupy the interstices, so there is going to be a part 3. Please tune in for part 3.